Ramassons batterie.
Okay. Παιδιά, θα ξεκινήσουμε τώρα την παρουσίαση της Τζέσικα. Θα σας παρουσιάζω την κυρία Τζέσικα Τζιουφρίντα. Έρχεται από το Πανεπιστήμιο της Νίν. Είναι ειδικό στην νευροψυχολογία, με μεγάλη πείρα και ως θεραπευτής και ως ερευνήτρια. Και θα μας μιλήσει, θα μας παρουσιάσει την νευροψυχολογική πλευρά της μουσικής. Επειδή το θέμα είναι έτσι λίγο αρκετά περίπλοκο, θα είμαι εδώ πέρα διαθέσιμος για μετάφραση. Για λόγους οικονομίας δεν θα επεμβαίνω συνέχεια. Απλώς σας παρακαλώ, άμα δείτε ότι στην αρχή είναι δύσκολο, κάντε κατευθείαν το σημάδι για το time out για τη μετάφραση, ούτως ώστε να αρχίσουμε να διακόπτω την ροή της παρουσίασης και να μεταφράσω πρόταση. Okay? Καταλάβαμε ή το είπα πολύ πρώτα? Okay. Jessica, if you...
Okay, we can
Okay, as I'll say it in English as well. Please welcome Jessica Giuffrida, Madame Giuffrida, who is an expert in neuropsychology and comes from the University of Nîmes and will present to us the neuropsychological aspect of music and will give us the opportunity to further elaborate and discuss on the potential therapeutic benefits of music in drug addiction treatment based on the neuropsychological evidence that already exists in the literature. Okay?
Exactly. Well, you said everything, so I think we can start. As Vasilis said, well, the subject is going to be a little bit more theoretical if compared to, I don't know.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So the subject will be a little bit more theoretical if compared to what you have done so far. So first thing I want to ask you is how many, apart from somebody that I already know here, how many of you have some notions, some knowledge about neuroscience, neuropsychology? Okay, perfect. So,
Όσοι από εσάς ξέρετε νευροψυχολογία, έχετε γνώση νευροψυχολογία.
okay, so if there is any problem, you have your timeout sign, and Vasilis is going to translate. The only thing that I ask you is, please try to be interactive. Okay, I know it's, as I said, it's a really, really theoretical subject, but at least the beginning, I tried, to prepare a little bit a draft for talking a little bit about your ideas concerning music and your experience related to music. So we'll try to discuss a little bit. You have your microphones, so I think that they can use the microphones if you need to. If you need to ask, if you need to talk.
Η Τζέσικα προτείνει ένα διαδραστικό, όποτε θέλετε να ρωτήσετε κάτι, βασισμένο στην πείρα σας ή σε κάποια ιδέα σας, ανοίξτε το μικρόφωνο και διακόψτε την παρουσίαση.
Okay.
Θέλουμε ένα διαδραστική παρουσίαση. Thank you, Jessica.
Okay, so I started with a sentence by Henry David Thoreau, HDT for his friends, which concerns music. And I think that it provides a good insight about what we are going to talk about today. So when I listen to music, I fear no danger, I'm invulnerable, I see no enemies, I'm in harmony with the earliest times and with the latest. I would like to ask you about your first impressions concerning this sentence. When you read this sentence, what do you think about? Is there anything that, I don't know, rings a bell related to your experience, to your feelings when you listen to music, when you play music? I know that many of you have very, very deep knowledge and practical knowledge about music and play some music, so some instruments. So, what do you think when you read this sentence?
Η Τζέσικα ρωτάει Τι καταλαβαίνετε, τι νιώθετε, τι σας έρχεται στο μυαλό όταν βλέπετε αυτή την πρόταση τη συγκεκριμένη. Okay.
Σημαίνει η λέξη Inverna.
Νιώθω ότι δεν έχω καμία ευαισθησία, δεν απειλούμε. Θέλω να πούμε είναι εύθραστος, ευάλωτος. Ναι. Μη εύθραστος, νιώθω ότι δεν κινδυνεύω. Press the button, Gani.
Hold it.
Or you can also speak loud.
I can speak out.
Yeah.
That makes me think of when I'm walking down the street with my headphones listening, and I feel like I'm completely in my own world, and everything is good, and everyone's walking past, and I'm just feeling good. So yeah, it gives me a sense of also feeling
Okay,
very
great.
strong.
Makes me think of horror films, and I feel vulnerable and I feel danger. And the music actually enhances that dangerous feeling. So it makes me think of the opposite.
It's
like
interesting.
potentials of the
It's
opposite.
extremely interesting what you said, and we are going to keep it in mind for further discussion when we are going to talk about. But it's extremely interesting. So, did everybody understand what? Sorry, your name.
Emma.
Emma said.
Καταλάβατε όλη την εμπειρία μας. Σίγουρα είμαστε εκεί με την μετάφραση. Εσείς από την εμπειρία σας ως μουσική που γνωρίζετε και θεωρητικά και και πρακτική εμπειρία, όταν βλέπετε αυτή την πρόταση, τι σας έρχεται στο μυαλό, πώς τη μεταφράζετε με βάση την εμπειρία σας. Υπάρχει κάποιος που θα να πει μια άποψη?
I believe that in order to be in harmony with the earliest times and with the latest, if you're a musician and you have to play an instrument, a particular piece, you have to be concentrated on what you read. So you have to be you have to focus on the present. So maybe if you focus on present and on that particular time, then you're going to be in harmony with the past and the future. You know, only if you know that you can control that particular time.
Sure, you need to be completely focused, completely present in the moment, in the here and now. I think, unfortunately, I've never learned how to play music, but I think yes, according to what I've understood, it's what you mean. You really need to be present. So it's like. It's like living in sort of a bubble. It's probably more or less similar to what your colleague said. You know, it's sometimes a good feeling. Sometimes can also be a bad feeling, as Emma said. But it's something that helps you in. Detaching you probably from the outside world.
Okay. Αυτό που λένε ότι μέσα από τη μουσική μπορεί να υπάρξει και θετική απόκριση και αρνητική απόκριση, δηλαδή μπορεί να πάρουμε ευχάριστα συναισθήματα ή δυσάρεστα συναισθήματα, αλλά σε γενικές γραμμές είναι σαν να είσαι μέσα σε μια φούσκα, όπου στην ουσία με αυτό που περιέγραψε πριν ο Γκάνι, σου επιτρέπεται να απομονωθείς από τον υπόλοιπο, τον εξωτερικό κόσμο.
I think there are quite a few parameters in what is said there.
Yes.
I think it has to do with your background, your musical background, and the kind of music you're listening to. If it's a piece that you have chosen, or something that someone else has chosen. So if it relates to you, and if it brings memories from your past, if something is connected to an experience that you had that was traumatic, okay, then perhaps the music is not making you feel in harmony.
Sure.
It might make you feel in danger. So I think it's a very personal thing and has to do, you know, with the background, the memories, a lot of things.
Sure. Anybody else who wants to just talk about the first impression, the first reaction when you read this sentence? You don't need to analyze. We are going to do that after, but.
Δεν χρειάζεται να αναλύσετε μόνο την πρώτη σας εντύπωση. Το πρώτο πράγμα που σας έρχεται στο μυαλό όταν βλέπετε αυτή τη φράση για τη μουσική. Η πρώτη σας εντύπωση.
I would say almost the same thing that. that music has the capacity of taking you into its own world. And probably who wrote that probably got what he needed at that moment, and he found that in music. He found protection from danger, or I don't know.
Yes. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
For me, the first word was truth. Of the senses.
Mm-hmm.
Without analyzing, truth. Only this.
So you can completely relate to
Yes.
what you read here.
And understand.
Okay. Yes.
For me, music connects brain and emotions. Because you write the musical brain, and then all the things you write there have to do with emotions. So there are two things connected in music. I see a connection there.
Exactly.
I think it
Please use your
has a
microphones.
soothing effect on people. Soothing effect. It calms you down.
Yes. Sure. So you get this impression when you read the sentence. I think that well, obviously we are not talking about some some impression that is better than the other, or more valuable than another. But if you try to find a common point in all the things that you've said, basically there is something that is deeply related to emotions in general. I mean, the first impact and the first let's say aspect that you talked about, positive or negative, is related to emotions, right? And it's something that it's really evident in this sentence. What we're going to talk about today is why this happens, basically. Okay? Going to go on with a little bit more with the introduction, and then we're going to have a little bit a short model, let's say, concerning neuroanatomy for those who are not very familiar with this subject. But okay, we can go on. How would you define music? Again, speak.
This will be very interesting.
Yes.
Vibration.
Vibration.
What's it?
Vasilis,
Yes.
do you have anything to write down? Just
To write the pen and the yes.
sorry, I didn't think about it. So vibration for okay.
Notes. The notes. The notes.
Notes. You don't need to be extremely rational. Just you think about music. What's your idea of music? It can be more technical, it can be less technical. Okay, so vibrations, notes.
Okay, so vibrations. Is everybody vibrating in the seminar?
Well, that.
Just one thing before we go on,
Yes.
please. When you use your microphone, please turn it off afterwards, because it's only allowed to have 2 or 3 microphones open at the same time.
Oh, they can
So if you
interfere.
don't switch it off, another person will not be able to switch his or own. Okay. Jessica, would you like the tip? Okay.
Thank you, sorry. Thank you very much. So vibration,
And again, instead of that,
notes. Yes.
The intentional organization of sound and silence.
Okay. Somebody else.
rhythms and melodies organized or produced by voice or instruments.
Okay. Somebody else? Your idea of music?
Music is waves.
Waves.
Something more philosophical, like music exists before language. And music is our body, heart rate. We think we are music. The people are music.
Okay.
You can describe it with mathematics.
Sure. So there is a mathematical structure.
Yeah.
Any other contribution? Well, let's see.
She's universal.
Okay. Don't be shy. Well, let's see how somebody else will find it. Oh no.
Can I just briefly translate in Greek everything we just did
Okay.
out?
Okay.
Τι είπατε μέχρι στιγμής, τι δώσατε ως απαντήσεις, ότι η μουσική είναι δομήσεις, ότι είναι η σιωπή, την οποία μια επιδιωκόμενη σιωπή εσωτερικής φύσης, όπως η δεύτερη απάντηση αυτή δεν ήταν, έτσι δεν είναι, κάνω λάθος. Πώς το είπες, intentional?
Η οργανωμένη οργάνωση του ήχου και της σιωπής με πρόταση.
Okay. Η οργάνωση του ήχου και της σιωπής με πρόταση, ρυθμοί και μελωδίες, κύματα, ότι οι άνθρωποι μπορεί να είναι εκφράσεις μουσικές, βιοφυσιολογικά, ότι είναι μαθηματικές δομές και ότι είναι συμπαντικές, ότι είναι συμπαντική η μουσική. Okay.
Again, I'm going to make you work. Try to answer. If you want to write and read after, or if you want to answer to any one of these questions, feel free to answer. Just in order to know a little bit more about you and about your relationship with music. It's supposed to be.
This is something we should write down each one in a piece of paper, or just discuss it?
If they want to write, but I think it's better to discuss actually,
Okay.
just in order to know a little bit more about.
Δώστε λίγο, έτσι λίγο, όποιοι θέλετε, δώστε μία εικόνα όσον αφορά αυτές τις ερωτήσεις.
I like music very much, and on my way here, actually, I was listening to Vivaldi. The winter, you know, getting ready for
Yes.
just to get in the right mood.
Thank you. And why did you choose it? I think, I suppose, right?
Yes, that's the kind of mood I was in at the moment.
Okay.
The sun was shining, and I thought, oh, all this nice. Actually, maybe I was hot, and I chose the winter.
Yes, probably.
I don't know. But
Okay.
It was nice, very nice.
Thank you.
Music is very suggestive. So it invites you into an atmosphere.
Okay, thanks.
Κάποιος άλλος θα ήθελε να προσθέσει κάτι για αυτές τις ερωτήσεις? Μόλις ακούσαμε μια άποψη ότι η μουσική είναι σε προσκαλεί σε μια ατμόσφαιρα. Έτσι είναι υποκλητική.
I thought it was interesting, that idea about music for mood. Like sometimes if I'm in a particular mood, I want to listen to a music, but I can also change my mood by listening to different music. It enhances the mood. So if I'm feeling sad, maybe I listen to some sad music. It helps me to really feel that feeling. This is very powerful, a mood.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's true actually. And have you ever wondered why you prefer one kind of music or another one?
Έχετε αναρωτηθεί ποτέ γιατί προτιμάτε ένα συγκεκριμένο είδος μουσικής από κάποιο άλλο? Για ποιο λόγο? Ο Γκάνι μόλις είπε ότι μπορεί και αλλάζει τη μουσική του συνήθως μόνο με μουσική. Συγγνώμη, την διάθεσή του μόνο με μουσική. Για ποιο λόγο προτιμάτε κάποιο μουσικό γένος από κάποιο άλλο?
It can be related to sounds or songs that you heard when you were younger, and even if you're not conscious of it, it resonates or brings you to that place.
Something familiar and ασυνείδητα,
Unconsciously.
Yes.
I think culture maybe has something to do with it. Culture.
Yes, sure.
Which country you're from and what you're used to.
What you were exposed to, what kind of experiences that you had, surely.
So music does become a very big thing of that identity, and also their own tribes and their own new familiars or families. Yeah.
Else? Well, I think that many of you play music. I'm sorry.
I think that it's a kind of cliche to listen only to one type of music, like I'm metal, I'm rock, I'm hip hop, and this thing doesn't let you be open mind, because I think that all kinds of music are very important, and whatever mood you have, and if you listen to many types of music, helps to be a good musician, or not only a good musician, but to have knowledge about other countries, culture, or whatever.
Yes, I totally agree. Sure. I mean, it's not just something that you do. The fun component is obviously important, but there are so many different layers related to your choice concerning music. I think also to your choice to play an instrument, a musical instrument. I think that many of you play actually a musical instrument, right? And why you choose it, for instance?
The instrument, or the type of music to play in the instrument.
No, can be both. Can be both.
Η Τζέσικα λέει ότι στη μουσική προτίμηση σίγουρα ο παράγοντας της απόλαυσης παίζει ένα σημαντικό ρόλο, αλλά υπάρχουν πολλά διαφορετικά στρώματα συγκεκριμένα συνήθεια τα οποία συνδέονται με την επιλογή μας. Και ρωτάει παραδείγματος χάρη, επειδή αρκετοί από εσάς παίζετε κάποιο μουσικό όργανο, πώς διαλέξατε και γιατί ένα συγκεκριμένο όργανο και γιατί συνεχίσατε να παίζετε αυτό το όργανο? Αλλά και σε κατ' επέκταση και το στέλνει μουσική που διαλέξατε να παίζετε μετά το. Ποιος είναι ο λόγος, για ποιο λόγο να παίζετε αυτή τη συγκεκριμένη επιλογή?
I think it's unconscious in the biggest level.
We were young, we didn't know.
I don't know if it's on purpose, a choice on purpose, made on purpose.
I think probably you chose it because you liked it. I mean, and now probably you have more awareness about the reasons why you like it.
Personally, as I grow old, I'm changing. I feel connection to different instruments, and it's very frustrating.
No, I think it's very interesting, actually.
Yes, but it's like I don't like the instrument I play anymore. I want to try something else. Anyway.
Anybody else? Ποιος άλλος θέλει να προσθέσει κάτι?
I played the saxophone,
Το μικρόφωνο.
but I started on the recorder in the plastic when I was 7 or 8 at school because the opportunity came.
Okay.
And when I played that for long enough and got a bit bored and wanted to play something a bit more powerful. So, saxophone. That was it.
I'm just thinking about the question of the role of music, and I find the role of an educator quite interesting. You know, thinking about the way that music broadcasts messages. So before we had the internet, before we had radio, you know, how people would share information through songs and educate each other on what was happening. You know, and you might learn of what was going on through music. And I've certainly found music to be a great educator, you know, in my formative years, and especially of almost emotional literacy, you know, learning through music to how to feel different things and what different feelings feel like, you know, and how emotions could be expressed through words and sounds. So yeah, I find the role of it as an educator quite interesting.
Thank you. It's very interesting. I mean, your point of view. It's full of you know, things you can think about. Thank you very much.
And just carrying on from what Stephanie said, especially because I'm really interested in the teenage and growing brain, because that's the time of a lot of changes, and we know that there's neural pruning happening, so it's the time where all the synapses are being trimmed off of what's not being used. And in a familial situation and also in education, a lot of children and young people aren't actually able to have the full effective range. It's not good to show anger. It's not good, you know, within the family and in society. Whereas playing punk music in your bedroom and listening to all rock and being able to literally be safe and accept and
it's like to convey some emotions that are not extremely accepted.
That music has come from outside, so it means I'm not the only one. There are others out there, and so it keeps that human interconnectivity, that I'm not the only one, and so prevents that isolation. I think that's also that human need at that teenage.
Είμαστε εντάξει από μετάφραση. Όλοι καταλάβαμε όλοι τι είπανε οι συνάδελφοι.
Δεν άκουσα όλα.
Okay, please use your microphone when you talk. Η Στέφη στην αρχή είπε ότι ειδικά στην εφηβεία η μουσική δίνει την ευκαιρία στους εφήβους να μπορούν να ζήσουν διαφορετικά συναισθήματα μέσω της μουσικής. Είπε συνάδελφός της μετά από την Αγγλία και πρόσθεσε το ότι ειδικά στην εφηβεία όπου ένα μεγάλο μέρος των εγκεφαλικών κυκλωμάτων έχουν ήδη δημιουργηθεί και είναι ούτως ή άλλως μια δύσκολη περίοδος όπου δεν μπορούν να ζήσουν, δεν είναι ελεύθεροι να βιώσουν οποιοδήποτε συναίσθημα όπως σε προηγούμενες ηλικίες. Η μουσική εξυπηρετεί τη δυνατότητα να μπορούν να εκφράσουν το θυμό, παραδείγματος χάρη, να παίξουν rock, να παίξουν punk, και να νιώσουν ότι δεν είναι μόνοι και ότι είναι αποδεκτοί.
Okay, so I think we have some very interesting ideas here, and I also think, because I know what I'm going to talk about, you're going to find some of these ideas again in the following parts of my presentation. So, well, we can go on. If there is anybody who wants to comment, who wants to ask, who wants to, I don't know, who have a thought about this.
Okay. Μόλις είπε η Τζέσικα ότι αν δεν υπάρχει κάποιος να προσθέσει κάτι, θα συνεχίσει στο επόμενο κομμάτι της παρουσίασης.
Να σχολιάσω κάτι.
Ναι, βεβαίως.
Απλά θα ήθελα να πρόταση.
Βεβαίως.
Ότι πολλές φορές, παρόλο που η μουσική μας δημιουργεί συναισθήματα, εμείς είμαστε αυτοί που όσοι είναι μουσική εκφράζονται μέσα από αυτά τα συναισθήματα. Δηλαδή είναι μια διαδικασία αλληλένδετη.
He says that he speaks as a musician, that although music can actually induce emotions, it is us, the human beings, that actually choose to be expressed via music emotionally. So it's a multi-dimensional process, which has different sides to it to be examined.
Κάτι ακόμα.
And something else?
Παρόλο που όλοι σαν μουσική ξεκινάμε από ίδιες βάσεις, θα παίξουμε λίγο πιάνο, λίγο κιθάρα, κάποια ακουστά, εν τέλει κοινωνικοί παράγοντες είναι αυτοί που καθορίζουν την επιλογή του οργάνου. Και όσο μεγαλώνουμε, αυτή η σχέση μουσικής και ατόμου και της ψυχολογίας του πάλι είναι αλληλένδετη και μαθαίνουμε και άλλα όργανα, αποκτήνουμε τις εμπειρίες του και τα όργανα συνδέονται με συγκεκριμένες κουλτούρες, με το μυαλό μας.
Although in general most musicians begin from the same basis, learning some piano, learning some guitar, it is mainly social factors that actually mainly affect the choice of the instrument. And the process continues to evolve during the later stage of the adult life, where the personal psychology and music actually interact and lead to further knowledge of different cultures and different ways of
I think
thinking.
it's extremely related to what the children said.
A
Unfortunately,
little bit louder, please.
I didn't get their name, but
This is Tassos.
okay. In the second group,
And who else spoke before Tassos?
no, she. Yes.
Your name, please? Your name?
Yes.
Isabel.
Isabel and
Tassos.
and your name?
Me?
Yes.
Elsa.
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 Elsa. Elsa. Okay.
Elsa.
But I think that what
Tassos.
said is rather related to what the both of you said before.
Yes, or
So it's exactly it's a continuous it's process of personal growth and personal evolution that reflects itself in the choices related to music, because I suppose it's something which is extremely important in the life of a musician. So
Τάσο, η κυρία Τζέσικα λέει ότι αυτό που είπε ο Τάσος σε σχέση με αυτό που είπε η Ιζαμπέλ και η Έλσα σχετίζονται άμεσα, γιατί είναι μια διαδικασία προσωπικής, το καταλάβαμε όλοι, πώς μεγαλώνουμε προσωπικά και εξελισσόμαστε όσον αφορά την επιλογή οργάνων και την περαιτέρω εξέλιξη μουσικά.
okay, so let's see how somebody else defines music. It can be an ensemble of organized sounds, which is more or less what has already been said, a formal language. This is the technical definition from the Oxford Dictionary of English. So vocal or instrumental sounds, or both, combined in such a way as to produce beauty of form, harmony, and expression of emotion. And something has already been said about this. And let's see what somebody else thought about music. Music is truth.
So they basically got everything. All the answers.
Exactly. So Jackie Rack, well, we know he used to be extremely, how can we say, extremely histrionic in his choices and expressions. But music is truth. I think it's really powerful as a sentence.
Yes.
Or one of the most nihilist people who ever existed said this: without music, life would be a mistake. So I think that we have some really interesting examples of how music can impact on those parts of us that are not rational, first of all, and are not necessarily related to the prominent image that we have and we want to give of ourselves. Okay, ourselves actually. But according to you, who's responsible for your reaction to music?
Σύμφωνα με εσάς, ποιος ή τι είναι υπεύθυνο για το πώς ανταποκρίνεστε στη μουσική, είτε ακούγοντας, είτε παίζοντας, είτε με οποιαδήποτε τρόπο μπορεί να υπάρξει μουσική που μουσική.
Mothers.
Alicia? In the microphone, please. Switch on the microphone. You don't have a microphone.
I think the people that I heard to play to music when I was a child, or a teacher, or in family, I think.
Okay.
Our brain first.
Ποιο, πώς?
Ο εγκέφαλος μου.
Our brain, okay.
Yeah. Good answer. Yes. So our brain, which obviously is the same entity who processes all the information we are exposed to. So our memories, the influences we can have from our parents, from our teachers, from all the contexts we interact with. But we talked about,
Ο εγκέφαλος για αυτό το στάσιο είναι στην ουσία η ίδια οντότητα η οποία είναι υπεύθυνη για την επεξεργασία όλων των πληροφοριών που δεχόμαστε είτε από την παιδική ηλικία, από τους γονείς μας, από το περιβάλλον, είτε από τη μουσική ακούγοντας, παίζοντας.
So, what is interesting, according to me, is we talked a lot about feelings, about emotions, about things that we don't relate immediately to him, but actually, at the basis of our reactions, of our emotions, there are some neurological processes.
You're going to intrigue some questions here. You're going to trigger some questions here.
Sure.
Αυτό που είπε η Τζέσικα είναι ότι ενώ ο εγκέφαλος, αυτό όλα όσα είπαμε πριν, μιλούσαμε για το πώς η μουσική προκαλεί συναισθήματα, δεν μιλήσαμε για τον κύριο από εδώ, ο οποίος είναι ένας εγκέφαλος εν ενεργεία, ο οποίος είναι υπεύθυνος για τον τρόπο που εξεργαζόμαστε τις πληροφορίες, για τα συναισθήματα που είναι και για ό,τι σημαίνει να ακούμε μουσική. Αν έχετε να σχολιάσετε κάποιος αυτό ή κάποια αντίθετη άποψη, είστε ελεύθεροι εννοείται να την εκφράσετε.
Maybe heredity has something to do with...
The microphone, please, the microphone.
Maybe heredity also has something to do with the way we are predisposed to learning music.
It can be. It can be. It's not. You cannot tell for sure, but sure there are some of us who are more predisposed to music, to languages, to maths, to. So there can be a congenital predisposition, but it's not obviously the most determinant factor when it comes to choosing music or choosing a musical instrument or liking music. But sure.
Η ερώτηση αφορούσε την κληρονομικότητα. Κατά πόσο γονιδιακά και βιολογικά μπορεί να έχουμε μια συγκεκριμένη θετική προδιάθεση προς τη μουσική, προς τις επιλογές που κάνουμε όσον αφορά τη μουσική που επιλέγουμε να παίξουμε, να μάθουμε ή οτιδήποτε. Και η Τζέσικα λέει ότι μπορεί να μην έχει αποδειχθεί ακόμα ότι είναι ο σημαντικότερος παράγοντας που επηρεάζει τέτοιου είδους επιλογές ή τον τρόπο που η μουσική μας επηρεάζει και αντιδρούμε σε αυτήν, αλλά σίγουρα είναι πολύ πιθανό να παίζει ένα σημαντικό ρόλο στην όλη διαδικασία.
Hello, does that work? No? No. Should I just speak loudly?
Yeah.
I'm interested in kind of following on whether there's been neurological studies of it's really about attachment, Bowlby's attachment theory, and the recognition now that 45% of us come from insecure attachment, so the secure attachment and insecure. Yes. Therefore, 45% of us have a blueprint that's a little bit wonky, and whether congenitally, as we were speaking before, I would be really interested of playing the same music, or say it's maybe happy music and frightening music or whatever, to somebody with a secure attachment and somebody with an insecure attachment, and I'd be quite interested to see whether they'd be lighting up differently. I don't know, because it's just also considering what from trauma, neglect to loss has a significant effect on the functioning of the brain, and then how we relate in the external world as well as how our internal world is.
Sure.
So I don't know whether there's been any fMRI scans or
We're not actually talking about this today, but it's a really interesting question, and I don't have a specific answer. I don't have some studies that I can refer to right now. But if you want, you can give me your email, and we can go on with this discussion. But I think that your point actually is. I think it has been investigated, first of all. As we said before, and as we are going to say towards the end of the presentation, one of the most important reasons why our brain is so sensitive, because our brain is sensitive to music, okay, I'm going to anticipate this, and one of the reasons why it is so sensitive to music is the fact that music is able to evoke emotions, as you have already said. So, sure, there is a blueprint that is related to the experiences we've had during our childhood, and the attachment relationship is probably one of the most determinant one. So yes, I don't know if there is anything about fMRI. I suppose so, but I'm going to look for it, and we can continue via email or.
I've just been asked for a timeout.
Yes.
Is it okay?
Sure. So just in order to conclude, yes, considering that music has this ability to evoke motion, to enhance emotions, to sometimes to help us in changing our emotional state. I think that it's a very possible that we can react in a different way according to the imprinting we have received when we listen to some music that evokes positive or negative emotions.
Η ερώτηση αφορούσε το Bowie's Attachment Theory. Είναι μια θεωρία που λέει ότι όλοι προερχόμαστε από ένα παρελθόν το οποίο είναι ασφαλές ή ανασφαλές όσον αφορά την προσκόλληση που έχουμε στον τρόπο που μεγαλώνουμε, σαν ανθρώπους οτιδήποτε. Και η ερώτηση αφορούσε, υπάρχει κάποια μαγνητική τομογραφία, κάποια έρευνα που έχει χρησιμοποιήσει μαγνητική τομογραφία η οποία να εξέτασε το πώς αυτού του είδους ο παράγοντας μπορεί να έχει επηρεάσει, να επηρεάζει τον τρόπο που αντιδρούμε, που ανταποκρινόμαστε στη μουσική. Okay, η απάντηση είναι ότι δεν έχουμε συγκεκριμένη απάντηση, ακόμα δεν ξέρει η Τζέσικα, αλλά είναι πολύ πιθανό να έχει διενεργηθεί, δεν είμαστε 100% σίγουροι, αλλά σίγουρα μου είναι μια, για όσους είναι μαθητές του μεταπτυχιακού, πολύ ενδιαφέρουσα ερευνητική υπόθεση. I just made a joke because some of them are my students and this would be a very nice research question. Αλλά η Τζέσικα απάντησε, η ερώτηση επίσης αφορούσε το αν ο τρόπος μεγαλώνουμε και του είδους προσκόλληση που έχουμε στον τρόπο που μεγαλώνουμε όσο περνάει ο χρόνος, αφήνει κάποιο εσωτερικό αποτύπωμα το οποίο παίζει ένα σημαντικό ρόλο όσον αφορά τις μουσικές επιλογές μας. Okay. Στο μέλλον. Και η απάντηση ήταν το ότι σίγουρα αφήνει κάποιο αποτύπωμα, αλλά ακόμα παρόλο που έχουμε βρει ότι υπάρχουν διάφοροι παράγοντες που μπορούν να σχετίζονται, δεν είμαστε σε θέση ακόμα να το αποκωδικοποιήσουμε πλήρως και να το απαντήσουμε ειδικά με συγκεκριμένα όσον αφορά τη συγκεκριμένη θεωρία.
Okay. Any other question? I go on and then feel free to interrupt to ask them, okay? So, playing music is an extremely complex task because there are many functions that are activated. First of all, we have auditory perception. Okay, you need to listen to what you're doing and to what the others are doing. Sensory integration. It's okay, sensory integration.
Ακουστική αντίληψη, sensory integration, το καταλαβαίνετε. Την αισθητηριακή αφομοίωση, okay.
Motor planning. We need to know what you're going to do next, obviously, when you're playing an instrument. Expression of emotions and identification of emotions, right? So when you play, your brain is engaged in all these activities at the same time.
Όταν παίζετε λοιπόν μουσική, ο εγκέφαλός σας είναι ενεργά συνδεδεμένος με όλες αυτές τις διαδικασίες. Δηλαδή, συμμετέχει σε όλες αυτές τις διαδικασίες.
And when you listen to music, even though it can be simpler, well, you don't have motor planning and you don't need the entire background that a musician has, which is something that, for parentheses, changes dramatically the structure of the brain. You know, knowing how to play a musical instrument is extremely powerful in order to change our brain structure. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to talk about this today, but I didn't do that. Sorry. At the end of the presentation, I'm going to write my email. So if anybody anyone has a question, has a curiosity, something you want to discuss further, you can just write an email and.
Για αυτή τη διαφάνεια λέει ότι παρόλο που θα μιλήσει για τη μουσική ακρόαση, μπορεί να φαίνεται φαινομενικά να είναι πιο απλή από τη μουσική εκτέλεση, να μην περιλαμβάνει τον κινητικό σχεδιασμό, περιλαμβάνει κάποια κοινά και σημαντικά στοιχεία. Και επίσης ήθελα να σας πείτε ότι αν έχετε κάποιες απορίες ούτως ή άλλως μετά την παρουσίαση, θα σας δώσω το email της σε περίπτωση που χρειαστείτε περαιτέρω πληροφορίες για μετά.
Θα σου πω μόνο κάτι μικρό, ότι η μουσική ακρόαση είναι διαφορετική σε μουσικούς και μη μουσικούς.
Okay. He says that research has shown that music listening is actually different between musicians and non-musicians.
Yes.
A different effect on the brain.
It's true. It's true. Between musicians and between experts, people who probably don't play an instrument very well, but are really experts about music. And we're going to see a video about this that I think you're going to find pretty interesting. So, listening to music is a complex process as well. We still have auditory perception, we still have sensory integration, we have emotion expression, we have emotion identification, and we have all that part that is related to the identification and integration of some aspects that are related to music, so harmony, rhythm, melody, which are obviously, which is true obviously for the musicians when they play, but when you listen, your brain is specifically focused on this part. Okay, when you play, is something that is like in the background, is a secondary process, which is almost automatic, I think, for those who know how to play music. Okay.
Μας το γίνεται μετάφραση, δεν καταλάβατε. Χρειάζεται κανείς μετάφραση?
I can okay. So, for those who are not familiar with what we're going to talk about, I think they're going to have the slides, right?
Sorry?
I think they're going to have the slides after
the slides, the notes, yes.
Yeah, the PowerPoint.
Yes, is it included in the course pack in the notes? Or? Okay. Μπορεί να σας στείλει μετά και τις παρουσιάσεις με τις διαφάνειες για όποιον το βρίσκει λίγο δύσκολο το ανατομικό κομμάτι, στο οποίο θα πούμε τώρα λίγο πιο μέσα.
Well, you can refer to this part. Brain, dorsal view and ventral view. We have the anterior part, we have the posterior part. Sorry, I didn't translate it, but in the ventral view it is translated. So the dorsal view basically it's the surface. Okay, what you see if you have a brain here and you look at it like this. The ventral view is the bottom part. Okay, what you see if you have brain here and you are looking at it from here. The anterior part is this one. The posterior part is this one. Okay. Lateral view, you have the anterior part and you have the posterior part, which is where the cerebellum is. This is the medial view, and you still have the anterior part where the frontal lobe is, and the posterior part is where the cerebellum is.
Μας δίνει τα μέρη του εγκεφάλου τώρα, έτσι.
Is everything clear?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So probably you already know that our brain is.
Just maybe to go a little bit slower when we go in the anatomy of the brain, because I don't know if everybody is familiar with the brain anatomy.
Sure.
Just a bit slower.
Sure. So you probably know that there is the most external layer of our brain is called brain cortex, right?
Brain cortex, έτσι είναι, ο κεφαλικός φυλλός είναι το εξωτερικό κομμάτι του κεφάλου.
And when you look at our brain and the brain cortex, you can find some sulci and some gyri. Okay, so some parts that are not exposed, and some parts that are exposed. That gives to our brain this structure, which is very similar to the structure of a nut. Okay?
A nut. Λέει ότι πως η δομή του εγκεφάλου μοιάζει στην ουσία με τη δομή ενός καρυδιού, και λέει ότι τα μέρη που μόλις σας έδειξε, κάποια είναι εσωτερικά και κάποια είναι λίγο περισσότερο, λιγότερο επιτεθειμένα από τα άλλα.
And we can't really say that there are some parts of our brain that are uniquely responsible for some functions, but there is a specialization anyway. Okay, so there are some parts of our brain where the neurons, the cells, are more specialized in some specific functions, and these neurons are connected to some other neurons elsewhere in our brain in order to create a network.
Okay. Αυτό που λέτε ότι μέσα στον εγκέφαλο υπάρχει εξειδίκευση, συγκεκριμένοι νευρώνες εξυπηρετούν συγκεκριμένους σκοπούς, ενεργοποιούνται σε συγκεκριμένες διεργασίες εγκεφαλικές, και αυτοί οι νευρώνες σχετίζονται με κάποιους άλλους νευρώνες για να δημιουργήσουν ένα δίκτυο.
You're probably going to find some of these expressions during, in the presentation, in the next parts of the presentation. So we talked about the sulci, and this one, if you can see the mouse, is the central one. Okay, and it's pretty important because it divides our brain. It divides the frontal lobe in our brain from the parietal lobe. Okay, and another sulcus which is extremely important is the lateral sulcus, which is this one, and it is the one which divides the frontal lobe and the temporal lobe, which is this one. Okay.
Σας δίνει δύο σημαντικά σημεία του κεφάλου για το πώς χωρίζεται το frontal από το...
Άβλεκες είναι.
Ναι, οι άβλεκες. Okay.
And then you have some gyri which that are quite important. So the postcentral gyrus and the precentral gyrus. Okay? The superior temporal gyrus.
Είμαστε όλοι και με αυτό που είδαμε, μιλάει για τις έλικες τώρα, για δύο σημαντικές έλικες στον εγκέφαλο.
We talked about the lobes. Here you have the frontal lobe, which is the lobe that has evolved more recently. You have the parietal lobe here in green. You have the occipital lobe, which is the behind, and the temporal lobe. Okay?
Οι τέσσερις εγκεφαλικοί λόμποι μόνο στους παρουσίες.
As we said, can I go on?
Yes.
Okay. As we said, there are some parts of our cortex that are more specialized for some functions. So, for instance, you have the auditory cortex here. You remember that this is the superior temporal gyrus, and you have the auditory cortex. Okay? You have the visual cortex here, which is the part of our brain that is responsible for processing the informations that arrives to your eyes. What else? You have the premotor area, which corresponds more or less to the precentral gyrus, and you have the somatosensory cortex that corresponds more or less to the postcentral gyrus. Okay?
Yes. Καταλαβαίνω ότι μας παρουσιάζει τα μέρη του εγκεφάλου. Το ένα έχει να κάνει με την επεξεργασία οπτικών ερεθισμάτων, το άλλο με την επεξεργασία ακουστικών ερεθισμάτων, το άλλο με την πρικινητική περιοχή, επεξεργασία σχετικών πληροφοριών, και το τελευταίο το οποίο είπε ήταν το σωματοσένσορι κόρτεξ. Okay. Διαφορετικά σημεία του εγκεφάλου που επεξεργάζονται διαφορετικά ερεθίσματα.
And then you have some areas that are specialized in integrating the information, which are usually this one, the posterior parietal cortex, and the infratemporal cortex. Okay? And then you have the prefrontal cortex, which is usually, but not only, but usually it's responsible for the most complex cognitive tasks. It is the most recent part of our brain. It has evolved, and it is responsible for the most complex cognitive tasks.
Αυτό το σημείο του εγκεφάλου είναι υπεύθυνο για τις γνωστικές λειτουργίες που συχνά είναι πολύ πολύπλοκες και είναι το... You said it's the most recently evolved part of the brain.
The prefrontal cortex.
Yes. Και ότι είναι το πιο πρόσφατα εξελιγμένο κομμάτι του εγκεφάλου.
Just at this point, this is the point where, as Dan Siegel explains about the bottom part of the brain is the old fight, flight, freeze, and then the limbic, and then the prefrontal. The main thing is that when somebody may be addicted to drugs or drinking, or children that have had difficulties, what we say is that the prefrontal goes offline.
Yes.
And therefore you cannot talk rationally to someone to bring them down, to regulate them, to help them to regulate, because actually all rational is offline and it's now stuck in fight, flight, freeze or fawn.
Yeah, which is not a cortical reaction.
That's where I think music, though, could transcend to help regulate.
Exactly.
To get the prefrontal cortex.
Exactly.
Online.
Exactly. We are going to see why.
Yeah.
So yes, I don't know if you understand. Yeah.
Μιλάνε για το prefrontal cortex που μόλις παρουσίασε η Τζέσικα και λέει και η ερώτηση αφορούσε το ότι, η παρατήρηση μάλλον αφορούσε το ότι κυρίως στα άτομα που πάσχουν από εθισμό, αυτό το κομμάτι του εγκεφάλου εντός εισαγωγικών έχει βγει offline, έχει βγει εκτός λειτουργίας. Δηλαδή οι γνωστικές λειτουργίες και ένα κομμάτι κάποιων διεργασιών που σχετίζονται με αυτό το μέρος του εγκεφάλου στην ουσία είναι εκτός ελέγχου.
Δηλαδή το προστινό μέρος του εγκεφάλου.
Το prefrontal cortex, αυτό που έχει πλέον.
Prefrontal.
Και η παρατήρηση αφορούσε ότι όταν κάποιος είναι θυσμένος στις ουσίες, αυτό το κομμάτι του εγκεφάλου δεν λειτουργεί κανονικά. Το οποίο σημαίνει ότι, τουλάχιστον έτσι δόθηκε η εξήγηση, ότι όταν μιλάς με κάποιον ο οποίος είναι με πυρεοσιόν ή έχει καταχραστεί ουσίες για πολύ μεγάλο χρονικό διάστημα, δεν μπορείς να κάνεις μια λογική συζήτηση μαζί του. Και η πρόταση είναι ότι η μουσική ενδεχομένως να μπορεί να βοηθήσει στην ρύθμιση της λειτουργίας αυτού του συγκεκριμένου κομματιού.
Αυτό το κομμάτι του εγκεφάλου, τι λειτουργίες, ας πούμε, εκεί πέρα έχει να κάνει με τον λόγο, με την ομιλία, αυτό το κομμάτι του εγκεφάλου, με τι έχει να κάνει?
Can you please describe in more detail the functions involved in the prefrontal cortex?
Sure.
Speech, cognitive functions more specifically.
we're going to talk about them later, but usually you have all those functions that are included in the domain of executive functions. Okay, so you have reasoning and abstract reasoning, problem solving. You have attention. You have working memory.
Έχουμε εκτελεστικές λειτουργίες, έτσι, με τη μνήμη. Attention, working attention, working memory, με το να λύνεις προβλήματα. Δίληψη, πώς, διακλήψη, perception.
Perception is more parietal, actually, because perception is, we can say that perception is the consequence of the integration of all the sensory information, right, and the processing of all the sensory information. So usually the associative areas that are mainly located in the parietal lobes are responsible for this, and the infratemporal lobe as well. So as we said, we have reasoning and problem solving, we have abstraction, we have working memory, we have attention, we have impulse control.
Έλεγχο αυθορμητισμού, αφαιρετική ικανότητα.
Η λειτουργία του λόγου σε ποιο μέρος του εγκεφάλου?
Functions related to speech, in which part of the brain is it?
Usually, you have the posterior part of the frontal lobe that is involved in speech, and you have the temporal lobe. And speech, as we're going to see, is an asymmetric function. That's to say that usually the left hemisphere is more specialized in speech, and the part that is clearly asymmetrical is a part of the temporal lobe that is called the planum temporale. Okay, you have a network actually that is responsible for speech, and most part of that network is located in the temporal lobe, and then you have some contributions from the posterior frontal lobe as well.
Το είπε και πάρα πολλά και δεν ξέρω αν το μεταφράσω. Ότι ο λόγος είναι μια συμμετρική λειτουργία, το ότι δεν είναι σαν κάποιες άλλες λειτουργίες και ότι αφορά κυρίως το αριστερό κομμάτι του εγκεφάλου. Και Jessica, can you please repeat the areas related mainly to the speech?
Yes, I said that speech is an asymmetric function that is for the most part of the human beings, because you can have some cases in which speech is processed mainly by the right hemisphere, but usually it's the left hemisphere that is responsible for speech. There is a part of the lobe, the temporal lobe, which is called the planum temporale, which is clearly specialized for all the things that are related to speech, and you have a network that is.
Κυρίως το planum temporale, αλλά και ότι υπάρχει ένα συγκεκριμένο δίκτυο που είναι ενεργό όσον αφορά τον λόγο, και ότι υπάρχουν κάποιες εξαιρετικές περιπτώσεις που ενώ κατά κύριο λόγο το αριστερό ημισφαίριο είναι αυτό το οποίο εμπλέκεται σε λειτουργίες που σχετίζονται με τον λόγο, υπάρχουν κάποιες εξαιρετικές περιπτώσεις όπου σε κάποιους ανθρώπους είναι το δεξί ημισφαίριο που κυριαρχεί κατά διάρκεια λειτουργιών, εκτέλεσης λειτουργιών που σχετίζονται με τον λόγο.
So you have a network, as I was saying, you have a network that is mainly located in the temporal lobe, and you have some contributions from the posterior frontal lobe, and in this network you can find some areas that are responsible for language production, for comprehension, for the integration of all the parts that are related to language, written, spoken and written, okay, and for the integration of all information you need in order to program your brain when you need to when you need to speak, to program your brain for speaking. So obviously you have some part of frontal lobes that are concerned for the parts that is related to motor planning, and you have the supplementary motor area and the primary motor area that are concerned as well, because you need to actually articulate when you speak. So it's a network.
Μπορείτε να φύγει πιο κοντά ποιος δεν βλέπει καλά, έτσι.
Okay.
Μια ζωή, άμα κάποιες λέξεις δεν ξέρω εγώ να τις μεταφράσω καλά, γιατί λίγο η ορολογία του κεφάλου δεν είναι ειδικότητά μου. Θα με συγχωρέσετε γι' αυτό, σε κάνα όσον αφορά κάποια μέρη του κεφάλου θα τα λέμε και στα αγγλικά. Okay. Yes, please go on.
Okay. Okay, so we talk about the cortex. Now we're going to look at the sagittal view of our brain, and we're going to talk about some subcortical structure. Okay, so we have the cortex, which is the external layer, which is very, very, very thin. Okay, and we have all the things that are inside. Okay.
Κάποιες λειτουργίες όσον αφορά τα χιλιόμετρα που εμπλέκονται κάτω από το θείο του κεφάλου, εσωτερικά.
And all these parts that are inside are usually older than the cortex. Okay, they evolved earlier, and they are called subcortical structures. They are involved. They are extremely important because they are responsible for the communication, let's say, of some of the other cortical parts, okay? Between the other cortical parts, sorry. So you have the thalamus, which receives some projections from the sensory cortex, okay? It integrates the information and it reprojects the information to some other part of our cortex, the associative areas. Okay. You have the hypothalamus, which is responsible for the internal regulation and also for some parts of this communication process. You have the pineal gland, which has a marginal role actually, but it's there. You have the cerebellum, which is responsible for motor integration, usually, not just, but mainly for motor integration. You have the mesencephalon here, sorry, which is responsible for internal regulation as well. So temperature, hydration, all the things that are necessary for life are performed. Let's say all the functions that are necessary for life are performed by the mesencephalic structures. Okay. And then you have the two parts that are extremely old, the two parts that relate our encephalon to the rest of our body. Okay, so the pons and the medulla oblongata.
Everybody understood, or should somebody translate for me as well, because this is getting a bit difficult even for me as well.
Can I just add something about thalamus, just to maybe add some more idea about it? So thalamus is like, it's a processing hub for all incoming information from the outside world. So it may be things you see, it may be things you hear, taste, touch, and these signals go through to the thalamus. and it sorts it like a file. It goes from a file and information. So that was a little information.
Yes.
That might help.
Exactly. So the information is processed. It's a first level, let's say, of processing, and then it's sent to some other parts of our cortex. Yes, absolutely.
Excuse me, I didn't listen to the function of cerebellum.
Cerebellum is not just responsible for motor integration, but it's responsible for motor integration.
And it's balance, isn't it?
Yes, also.
Παρεγκεφαλίδα.
Yes, balance, motor programming.
Για την ορολογία απευθύνω στο Στάθη γιατί δεν τα ξέρω μόνο στα αγγλικά. Okay. No, just for the translation.
Again, go on.
There's just some terminology of the brain that I don't know it in Greek, I know it in English, but I don't know it in Greek, so. But it's okay.
Το pineal είναι η επίθεση. Αυτά.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Google.
Να ρωτήσω κάτι. Το κομμάτι της ισορροπίας που είπαμε ότι οφείλεται στην παρεγκεφαλίδα.
Yes, the part of balance, which part of the brain is it attributed to in terms of
balance? So you have part of the auditory system that is related to balance, and then you have some really little structures that we can see here that are called ganglion, basal ganglion, and the cerebellum as well.
Και ένα μέρος του ακουστικού συστήματος και ένα μέρος του cerebellum.
Another thing that we're going to talk a lot about is the cingulated ears here, which is really deep. It's still cortex, but it's situated really, really deep in our brain. Well, this is the calcarine sulcus. We're not really talk about it, but just in order to know where it is. And this is the corpus callosum, which is responsible for the communication between the two hemispheres of our brain. It's a structure that is made of neural fibers. Okay, myelinated fibers, and it's responsible for the communication between the right part of the brain and the left part of the brain.
Which one? Is
The corpus callosum.
Αποτελείται από νευρικές σύνες και εμπλέκεται άμεσα στην επικοινωνία μεταξύ αριστερού και δεξιού μέρους του κεφάλου.
Συνδέει δηλαδή τα δύο ημισφαίρια.
Εμπλέκεται στις λειτουργίες που αφορούν και τα δύο. Συνδέει το ένα με το άλλο.
And you have also the pharynx, but it's not really. We're not going to talk about it actually. So.
Just checking. Is it the corpus callosum that when they've done one of the first neuro image scans, I believe that's what they call it, about again child's brains from insecure attachment and attachment? Is it the corpus callosum that was actually less, the actual mass of the corpus callosum? Corpus callosum.
Yeah, I think probably there is a part, one of the two extremes, that has a different size. I think so. So it means that. So it means that the connections didn't develop in a normal, let's say, way.
Okay. So therefore, as adults, it's even more difficult to process information from
Yes.
right and left hemisphere.
Exactly.
Okay. Καταλάβατε την ερώτηση? Γιατί δεν ρωτήσετε τα translation?
Δεν χάνουμε.
Λοιπόν, η ερώτηση αφορούσε αυτό που είχε πει στην αρχή για το attachment theory, έτσι, για τη θεωρία της προσκόλλησης. Και ρώτησα αν σε κάποια έρευνα που είχε διαβάσει στο παρελθόν, αν ήταν αυτό το κομμάτι για το οποίο μιλούσε μόλις τώρα η Τζέσικα, που ήταν μικρότερο σε αυτούς που είχαν προσκόλληση ανασφάλεια προσκόλληση κατά τη διάρκεια που μεγαλώναν. Okay. Και κατά πόσο αυτό όταν κάποιος είναι ενήλικος μπορεί να αλλάξει αυτή η μάζα όταν είναι μικρότερη, όταν είναι κάποιος ενήλικας, αν μπορεί να αλλάξει τόσο ώστε να βελτιωθούν κάποιες συγκεκριμένες λειτουργίες.
So, unfortunately, we don't have the time to talk about this today, but what Emma was saying is at least partially related to brain plasticity. That's to say that our brain develops and consolidates the connections between neurons and between obviously all the parts that are involved in neural networks as a function of the stimulation that it receives. Okay, so when there are some situations of less stimulation, obviously the connections are weaker and are also less in terms of number. It's a very simplified explanation, but unfortunately we don't really have the time to talk about this today. We're going to talk about brain plasticity related to music and to the therapeutic utility of music, but we're not really focusing on that.
Okay. Στη συνέχεια της ερώτησης που έγινε πριν από λίγο, η απάντηση είναι ότι θα μιλήσει βασικά σε επόμενες διαφάνειες για το brain plasticity, το πώς στον εγκέφαλο μέσα μπορούν να αναγεννηθούν ή να διορθωθούν νευρώνες και συγκεκριμένες συνδέσεις νευρώνων. Αλλά λέει ότι αυτό είναι ένα κλασικό παράδειγμα το πώς κατά τη διάρκεια που μεγαλώνει ο άνθρωπος στην εξέλιξη, στην ανάπτυξή του, υπάρχουν διαφορετικές διεργασίες όσον αφορά τις ενώσεις μεταξύ νευρώνων που δημιουργούνται μέσα στον εγκέφαλο και πώς αυτές επηρεάζουν τις λειτουργίες. Τις οποίες θα μας εξηγήσει λίγο πιο μετά όσον αφορά το brain plasticity, δηλαδή την πλαστικότητα του εγκεφάλου. Okay.
And another part,
Jessica, is it possible to take a break because there is a lot of information about it?
Sure. Sure. Well, I think it's 7:45, a quarter to.
It's a quarter to 6.
6, exactly. I think the break was planned for 6, so we can just anticipate it and.
Can you just? You want to do it now or in 15 minutes?
As they want. For me, it's exactly the same. I don't know if you want. We can find this part about anatomy.
No. It's fine. But we always have a schedule. But sometimes we have to improvise during the seminar.
Exactly.
People come from work or from.
Exactly. As you prefer. For me, it's fine. We can do it now. We can do it.
How long can it be? 10 minutes, 15 minutes?
Yeah, no, we are just talking a little bit about the limbic structures. We'll just talk about the neuron and the synapses. So,
15 minutes? 10
yes,
minutes?
even I think less.
Is it okay?
I think less, yes. As you
10
want.
minutes? No, it's
No,
okay.
I mean this can go on for another 10 minutes. So if you want to wait, we can carry on. Otherwise, we can take our break now.
Continue and.
Okay, continue.
Because probably we can just finish this part about anatomy, and then we can take our break and start with the part. Okay?
10-15 λεπτάκια και θα κάνουμε σε 10 λεπτά το διάλειμμα.
Well, actually, it's not something you need to to learn by heart right now. Okay, so just in order to know what we are going to talk about. So here you have the limbic system, and we're going to talk a lot about the limbic system. Okay, it's a group of structures that are both cortical and subcortical, but the most important ones are the ones that are named here. So.
Θα μιλήσουμε τώρα για το λιμβικό σύστημα, το οποίο είναι. Ορίστε.
Τεχνιακό.
Ναι, λιμβικό σύστημα λέγεται. Το οποίο είναι άμεσα συνδεδεμένο με αυτό που θέλει να μας πει η Τζέσικα μετά όσον αφορά τη μουσική, τα κομμάτια του εγκεφάλου που ενεργοποιούνται σχετικά με τη μουσική και το συναίσθημα. Και αποτελείται από τα κύρια μέρη που θα μας παρουσιάσει τώρα.
So you have other structures that we have already talked about, but you have basically the amygdala and the hippocampus. Okay? And we're going. I'm not going to describe them now because I'm going to describe them later. Okay, later. But you just have to keep in mind that they are part of the limbic system. Okay. The cells that compose our brain are called neurons. Okay. And neurons are like the majority, like the majority of the other cells. So you can find a lot of parts that probably you already know from your courses of biology in college or middle school. But the particularity of neurons basically are the synapses and the axons.
And the
axons, dendrites, axons, and synapses.
Dendrites, synapses.
Okay. So for the rest, you have the nucleus, you have the endoplasmatic reticulate, you have the ribosomes, you have the Golgi apparatus. So you have all the other things that you can find in any other cell of our body. Okay. But the specificity is the presence of the axon, the presence of dendrites, and the synapses. Okay?
Από όλα αυτά, ούτε και εγώ μπορώ να τα μεταφράσω, γιατί όλα πραγματικά με συγχωρείτε, αλλά είναι τρία βασικά. Πες μου.
Επειδή το έχω γραφτεί,
ναι, πες.
Ότι ο νευρώνας είναι ένα νευρικό κύτταρο ουσιαστικά. Έχει τα ίδια χαρακτηριστικά με οποιαδήποτε άλλα κύτταρα, δηλαδή έχει πυρήνα, εντοπλασματικό δίκτυο και τα σχετικά. Και οι διαφορές είναι αυτά, οι δεντρίτες, η δυνατότητα δημιουργίας σύναψης. Η σύναψη είναι το σημείο που ενώνονται δύο νευρικά κύτταρα, δύο νευρώνες.
Okay.
You're helping me.
It's great.
In Greek, because I don't know them in Greek.
It's great. So basically, a synapsis is the structure that neurons use in order to communicate. Okay. Here you have the final part of a dendrite and the postsynaptic structure. So there are some vesicles that are full of the substance that our neuron here uses in order to communicate. There are a lot of substances that can be used, and they are called neurotransmitters. Okay, they are synthesized by the neurons, and each neuron is in the synthesis of a particular substance. Okay.
Μιλάει για τους νευροδιαβιβαστές και ότι κάθε νευρώνας είναι υπεύθυνος για την έκρηση για μια συγκεκριμένη ουσία, ένα τύπο νευροδιαβαστή.
Ναι, υπάρχει δίκευση στο τι εγκρίνει και στο τι αναγνωρίζει το μετασυναπτικό κύτταρο.
Question? Okay. Okay, so what happens? The neuron is activated, okay? It releases its neurotransmitter in the intersynaptic space, which is this part.
Okay, ενεργοποιείται ο νευρώνας, εγκρίνει τον νευροδιαβιβαστή στο μεσοδιάστημα μεταξύ του προσυναπτικού και του μετασυναπτικού κλέφτ. Okay.
And in the post-synaptic dendrite, there are the receptors that are specialized in recognizing, in identifying, and in reacting to the specific neurotransmitter that has been released there.
Και στο μετασυναπτικό μέρος υπάρχουν οι υποδοχείς οι οποίοι αντιδρούν ή πάνω στους οποίους πάνω και δένουν οι συγκεκριμένες ουσίες, οι συγκεκριμένοι νευροδιαβαστές.
So when the dendrite reacts to the neurotransmitter, the neuron to which the dendrite belongs is activated. Okay, so our neurons communicate with each other by using electrical impulses that are transmitted by this process.
Και μέσω αυτής της διαδικασίας οι νευρώνες δουλεύουν μέσω ηλεκτρικών σημάτων που μεταδίδονται.
Γιατί συνήθως ο νευροδιαβιβαστής είναι κάποιο άτομο φορτισμένο είτε θετικά είτε αρνητικά και περνώντας τις ουσίες αυτές στο επόμενο κύτταρο του δημιουργεί θετικό ή αρνητικό φορτίο και έτσι μεταφέρεται μια πληροφορία σαν ηλεκτρικό φορτίο.
Okay. There are, as I said, there are many neurotransmitters. I'm not going to describe them, okay? But here you can have a short list, okay? And neurotransmitters can have an excitatory effect or an inhibitory effect. That's to say, they can activate the postsynaptic neuron or they can inhibit the postsynaptic neurons.
Okay. Είναι μια λίστα με νευροδιαβαστές, δεν θα τους περάσω όλους τώρα. Απλά τους έχει χωρίσει σε δύο κατηγορίες, αυτούς που διεγείρουν και αυτούς που εμποδίζουν τη διέγερση του μετασυναπτικού κομματιού του νευρώνου.
Okay. Okay, I think we finished the part about, neuroanatomy and neuroscience, so we can have our break and then we're going to start.
Come back with some music. Come back with some music.
Yes, exactly. We can go back to all things related to music.
Okay. 10 minutes break, 15 minutes break. Παιδιά, 10-15 λεπτά διάλειμμα.